Hello and welcome to the latest episode of True to Form, and this is a Cheltenham Festival Stable Tour special. Over the last week I've been visiting some of the top UK trainers, Dan Skelton, Ben Pauling, Paul Nicholls, Nikki Henderson. I've been asking them about their Cheltenham 2026 teams. Here's everything they told me and here's everything you need to know for the 2026 Cheltenham Festival. Yes, welcome back to True to Form, and I've been speaking to some of the top UK trainers over the last 7 days. I think there's been some very interesting angles for the 2026 Cheltenham Festival teams, and over the next 15, 20 minutes, I'm going to be talking to you guys and showing you the VTs of them talking about their horses for the 2026 Cheltenham Festival. Starting with Dan Skelton, went to his yard on Wednesday. I was going there expecting lots of chat about Grey Dawning, the New Lion, L'Heure de Sud, and there was plenty of chat about that, but you've probably seen all of that already. What I thought was very interesting is the horse he highlighted as his number 1 and number 2 fancies of the Cheltenham Festival. In races I probably wasn't expecting, and horses I probably wasn't expecting, and here it is for you now.
This is Maestro Conti, lovely horse. He did show a little bit too much spark, possibly on trials day, did a little bit too much halfway round. Harry had to wait on him for him to relax before he came home very, very strongly. I think has I don't want to call it an exceptional ability because we haven't seen enough of him at his age to call him absolutely exceptional, but he has an exceptional ability that he did 2 very, very different things. He went round Kempton on decent ground and showed lots of toe. He went around Cheltenham over an extended 2 miles on soft ground and also won. Like, it's a great thing to be able to have, that you have that versatility. And that talent, not many have that. He's got course form. His training has been exceptional. His work has only got better. I feel like this is one of our best chances of the whole week. Maestro Conti is one of our best chances of the week. She is the other one, I feel. Her form at home has been phenomenal. She looks great. Like, whatever beats her will win. She is absolutely flying. I'm super happy with her.
Maestro Conti and Panic Attack getting 2 very favourable mentions there from Dan. Look, I thought Maestro Conti's a nice horse, and he is a nice horse, but I thought what he did at Cheltenham earlier in the season, I thought it was okay. It wasn't like, absolutely doing cartwheels about it, but it seems like he's improved massively since. And what you couldn't see then in that VT is Dan saying his work's improved, he's really maturing as well. When I went there and he said it was his number 1 fancy, I was quite shocked by that. Panic Attack doesn't surprise me. She's had a fantastic season, winning the Coral Gold Cup, the old Hennessy, and also winning the Paddy Power Gold Cup. She's priced accordingly now for the Mare's Chase, but Dan clearly does like her for that race. I think it's going to be a very interesting race. But yeah, Maestro Conti is the number 1, it seems, for Dan Skelton. Obviously, looking at elsewhere at some of his handicappers, some of the big talking horses over the last month or so. Supreme US for the Thames. Katira's got a favourable mention as well for the Coral Cup, as well as Tell Her the Name, who's an interesting one for the County Hurdle. Dan talks about all of these horses in his handicap section. Listening to bits and pieces kind of thing. It seems like you think she's got a chance.
She's definitely got a chance, yeah. She's definitely got a chance. It was a nice run the other day at Ascot. She obviously started the season very well when she won a listed race. Admittedly, her main competitor that day was poorly. But she started it well nonetheless. Got a bit lost. The longer days, bit of sun in the air, better ground underfoot. We're into a handicap. We've got 11 stone, not 12. It's all just slowly.
Sounds like the Langer done that.
It's all slightly coming together.
Is this been a bit of a plan?
From about Christmas, yeah. Then the Potemps, we're going to run 2 here. Ace of Spades has had a phenomenal year. Won a qualifier at Huntingdon. Has really learnt to stay 3 miles properly. I've been happy with his work. The better ground, the better chance. His handicap mark is as high as it's ever been, but he's the best he's ever been. So, there's an offset to that. Very happy to have him there. I think he run well. Supremely West also runs in the race. I wouldn't say I've had this race in mind for him all season, but I toyed with the idea of whether he didn't quite stay, so I ran him over 2.5 the last day. That's conclusive evidence that he definitely does want 3 miles. I think he's got a good chance. I do.
Will he be the best one for 2?
I feel on scope left in handicap, yes. Tell Her the Name will be having his first run for us. Very high class horse. His work is as good as you can get a horse to work, to be honest with you. I know he's come with a catalogue of back issues, if you like. We've worked hard to iron those out. Whether we have or we haven't will be evident on the Friday. I can assure you under there is a very, very good horse. I hope for him and for his owner's sake that, you know, whether it's then or another day, you get to see what he can do at home, at the track as what he does at home, because it has been pretty impressive.
He'll be ready enough for the county.
Oh, he'll be ready.
Yeah, Katira's now a much shorter price than what she was at the time of Dan speaking. I remember speaking to Josh Stacey and he's saying, look, Katira's one that he really fancies. Days later, I went to Dan Skelton's yard. She's now 10-1 for the Coral Cup. Her price is probably gone, but Dan was very sweet on her and she was basically highlighted as definitely the number one dark horse / handicap fancy from Skelton's yard. Supremely West, I was watching another podcast with Paddy Brennan involved. He said he rode out at the Warwick Gallops Day the other week and he was on Cabra de Matin, I believe, and he was going up sides Supremely West, and he said that Supremely West looked very good. And based on what Dan said about Supremely West as well for the Thames, I think it's very interesting. Obviously, the horse had an interesting season to get him towards the Thames, and to my eye, like, he wouldn't be the type of horse I'd usually go for, and he's probably not the horse I'd really want to go for unless Dan had said something. But at the same time, I think I like Ace of Spades as a horse for the Thames, but then just asking the question, you know, who do you fancy more, Supremely West or Ace of Spades, and Dan giving the response of, well, I think it's a handicap prospect. Supremely West probably got a little bit more under the tank. That probably does say enough. I might still want to keep with Ace of Spades because he clearly does still have a good chance, but the chat is the Supremely West has, you know, definitely got a good chance. And the other one, Tell Her the Name. Now, I thought it was interesting that Dan brought Tell Her the Name up in conversation regarding the county hurdle. Obviously, first run for the yard. That'd be a small negative for me, especially in a big field handicap. But I thought for a long time this horse has been well handicapped, when with Ben Pauling, then with the O'Neills. I have a feeling, and this, you know, I could be wrong here, I have a feeling he might just run at Cheltenham. He might run an okay race. He might not even need to worry about what he does at Cheltenham. I think he might be an Aintree horse potentially. Get that running at Cheltenham. It's a difficult track around Cheltenham. Go to Aintree, flatter, easier. Might just go there, and I think that'd be easy for him. But I thought it was very notable that Dan mentioned him just in general for his Cheltenham team, and he looks like a well-handicapped horse. But that's Dan Skelton's team for the 2026 Cheltenham Festival, from what I learned. The first trainer I saw in the lead up to the 2026 Cheltenham Festival on this whole stable tour fiasco was Ben Pauling. Went down to his yard in Gloucestershire, and clearly his best chance at the 2026 Cheltenham Festival is the Jukebox Man in the Gold Cup. Seems weird to say that, but it does seem like A, he thinks that, and B, I probably think that. He's obviously, the big thing with the Jukebox Man is whether he will stay the extended 3 mile 2 around Cheltenham, having come from the King George, where it's a bit of a different test. Here's what Ben had to say about his chance in the Gold Cup.
I firmly believe this horse will stay. In fact, I actually would suggest he's going to be much more effective over this trip than he would be a sharp 3 miles round Kempton. I think from the back of 3 out, I honestly thought he'd go and win the King George as it was panning out by 2 or 3 relatively comfortably. And between the back of 3 out and to the last, they didn't just gain on us. He was behind again. It was only his tenacity and will to win that got his head back in front of the line. It wasn't because he was, you know, a speedy horse that just took off. That was asking every question you possibly could of the horse, and he somehow came up with the answers.
Obviously, you know, it's not the first person to say this, but one trainer to say stuff about the horses, you probably do have to take it with maybe a touch of salt, pinch of salt here and there, because, you know, they're all excited about the horse for Cheltenham. It's completely understandable, them getting really excited for those horses. I think with the Jukebox Man, I think he's being labelled as this 3 mile Kempton horse. You know, you listen to Ben, he seems to really, really fancy him for the Gold Cup and thinks that the stamina will be no issue. I suppose if you want to look at the Albert Bartlett as his run at Cheltenham when he did get collared on the line a couple of years ago, you could probably have a small bit of a negative behind that. However, he's definitely matured since, and I'd be probably in Ben's camp here. I wouldn't be so quick to label him as a definite Kempton 3 mile horse when he's probably not shown that he's not a Gold Cup horse, if that kind of makes sense. So, yeah, they seem to be really quite confident about a big run from him, and I think he's definitely a massively, massively unexposed horse going to the Gold Cup who really could be anything. Another horse that is probably in the same category, but I remember speaking to Ben at the start of the season, he thought that Handstands was the Gold Cup horse and the Jukebox Man was the Ryanair horse. Now we've gone through the season, the Jukebox Man's the Gold Cup horse and Handstands is potentially the Ryanair horse, if not maybe the Ultima horse. If they go to the Ultima, he could look well handicapped, and this is what Ben had to say.
Went to the Fleur de Lis, giving £8 to Protectorate when that's his Gold Cup, and I know he's 11, but he's not a bad horse. And to jumping 2 out to have him under pressure, I thought was an incredible, because again he looked a little bit behind the bridle throughout the race. Anyway, he's come out of that race and it's like a bull in a china shop. He's a totally different animal. His work has been brilliant. He worked well in Warwick on Friday night. I just think he's back, and I had him down last year as an equal to the Jukebox Man the whole way through the season. In fact, Handstands had by far the best form. You know, he's beaten Django By in the Sydney Banks, he's beaten him in the Scilliars. Django By's 9-2 for a Gold Cup and we're 100-1. I'm not saying we're going to go to the Gold Cup because I think it's a competitive race. And there's a lot of people that say, oh, Benny's a 2.5 miler. I think, I've entered him in the National because I think he's incredibly well handicapped and I think he'll stay all day. But if the Ryanair cut up a bit, he would be a genuine runner in that, and I'd be very surprised if he wasn't competitive. I might even think about a pair of cheap pieces.
Top weight in the Ultimate is never going to be easy. I think it'll be helpful now that Iroko might be going to the race for JP and Guerrero and Greenhall for the weights wise, but I still think Handstands is going to be going off a big enough weight. Ben Pauling is Handstands' #1 fan. There's no one in the yard, no one in the world that likes Handstands more than Ben Pauling. He's really, really fancied this horse for a while. It's understandable. He's a Grade 1 winner. He showed nice enough as a novice hurdler. And coming into this season, there wasn't anything to suggest that he wasn't going to be a potential Gold Cup horse. He probably has disappointed them since. However, the Fleur de Lis looked to my eye, and it looks what Ben said, as a little bit of a preparation as such, giving weight away to protect Rat in his Gold Cup on bad enough ground. I think he's definitely a much different horse. I'd like to see him in the Ultimate over the Ryanair. If he goes to the Ryanair, wouldn't give him much of a chance. If he goes to the Ultimate, has to be very interesting. And the other one I think they're really, really fancying at Cheltenham is Van der Poel for the Grand Annual. Looking at the Grand Annual as a neutral point of view, I don't think it's a great race this year. There's potentially 3 horses, all from the UK, that I think have got a chance. Van der Poel being one of them, Be Aware being another one for Dan Skelton, maybe Ryan's Rocket for Fergal O'Brien. But Ben's still very confident on Van der Poel, and he still thinks he's a well-handicapped horse.
He's got the profile of, an improving novice, which is always helpful in a race like that. If he gets a nice passage, he's in very good order and he'd have a right squeak. I would have had him down as my Arkle hope at the start of the season, and you could argue that we're just making up numbers in an Arkle with the top 2, but we'll see. What's he rated, 140 something? He's fine off that. Yeah, he should be. He's got the ability to be a bit higher than that. So it's the right time to have a go at handicap, and then we'll see where we go.
2 wins in a row, going for a hat-trick in the Grand Annual. It's not going to be easy, but I think it's the kind of race that's suiting horses who are improving, and it's going to go to probably one of the more classier types rather than one who looks to have tons in hand. Would I think Van der Poel has tons in hand on what I've seen? Probably not, but I know that Ben's fancied him all season. He highlights him as a well-handicapped horse coming into this season. He's clearly shown his hand already with 2 wins. Has he got enough under the tank? Ben's confident, I don't know so much kind of thing. I think he's obviously got a chance, but the handicapper might have caught up to him. But you have to sort of look at what Ben's been saying and give him a bit of a chance. Be Aware is probably the one that I think's maybe got a chance as well, and Dan Skelton was quite complimentary of him when I saw him early in the week. But it's looking set up to be a nice race, the Grand Annual. That's loosely what Ben Pauling's team looks for the 2026 Cheltenham Festival. Obviously, Ben, when he started out in racing, used to be assistant trainer to Nicky Henderson. This is what his team is for the festival. Seamless link there, I've done this before. Nicky Henderson's obviously got plenty of horses coming into this year's festival. I think he's got quite a strong team as well, and a lot of them are propped up by JP McManus-owned horses. Now, Manlaga was potentially an interesting horse, and a bit of a talking horse on Twitter, see where she would go, whether she would go to the Fred Winter or not. Jericho de Repine is a talking horse in regards to the Kim Muir. We asked him what the crack is with these 2 horses at Kempton the other day.
Manlaga, what are you going to do with her?
Fred Winter.
She going for Fred Winter?
Yeah.
Is that the black?
Yeah.
What was the takeaway from the Haydock race? Because obviously she was turned over first time, wasn't she?
Yeah, she was loaded. It was only second run of her life. She's now had 3.
Yeah. Had the friend with him in the plan? Because obviously she was talked to be.
Well, I don't. Yeah, but no. She's one of those that doesn't, like I'm saying with Impose 12, doesn't show you a whole heap in the morning.
Okay.
And she loves soft ground.
Right.
She would want it soft. If you remember, I actually took her out at Chepstow on finale day. Yeah. Took her out because the ground was too quick. I thought she wanted it really soft. She's probably better than we thought at the beginning. I don't know, we'll see.
Jericho de Repine, is he Kim Muir bound or is
That's the plan.
Okay.
Yeah.
And has this been a season-long plan?
No.
For the JP?
No. He's a funny horse. Nico thought he was our Arkle horse last year.
Okay.
And we kept having to move him up in trip, and then finally we got there. in the Pertemps, and then he won at Punchestown. He's not the easiest.
Okay.
I don't know. He's got to jump better. We'd probably put some cheek pieces on as we did last year, but I don't know. It's not the most obvious one to me, I must admit, but we'll see.
I know the news about Man Lager is going to excite plenty of people at home, being talked up as a Fred Winter horse, and it looks like that is the plan. I don't know too much about the horse, to be honest. I don't think there's many people that do know much about the horse, apart from the fact that she could have plenty in hand based on what she's shown. The only thing I'll say is that she obviously beat Pourquoi Papa last time out, who was given, I think, £7 or £8 by the handicapper for finishing second to Man Lager. Man Lager actually got away with it a little bit by winning that race. I think only got given a couple of pounds because she's a mare. And Paul Nicholls, and speaking to him about Pourquoi Papa, he thinks that he's still a well-handicapped horse, but he might have just played his cards too early in regards to the Fred Winter. You've got Man Lager, who's obviously beaten Pourquoi Papa and probably got away with it from the handicapper. So, yeah, if you want to read into it, it seems like Hendo's given enough away there. I thought it was a very... if you go back and watch it, I thought it was very interesting how it was a little bit of a wry smile, like, yep, she's had 3 runs now, kind of like this has maybe been a bit of a plan. So, Man Lager's going to Fred Winter. Jericho de Repne, like, I think I've said this on True to Form before, I've not been a fan of him for Cheltenham all season, and it seems like Nicky Henderson's not. Now, whether this is a big smokescreen, the fact it's a J.P. McManus horse, it's short in the market, whatever, I'd just be reading it as that Nicky Henderson doesn't really think he's got too much of a chance in the Kim Muir. And what's he, 4-1, 5-1 for the Kim Muir? I wouldn't be too sure now. So those would be the sort of J.P. McManus horses that I thought were interesting from Hendo's team. Obviously, he's got the likes of Old Park Star, he gave a good chance to. Django Bay gave a good chance to. I think he'll stay in the Gold Cup. Those are all things that are well publicised. For the other 2 horses I definitely wanted to mention from Nicky Henderson's team was Doddy the Great going to the stairs, because to my eye, I thought he looked very, very good at Kempton when he worked, as well as Jinko Blue. It could be very interesting for the Coral Cup. Doddy the Great.
Well, I thought he was terrific this morning. He loved it, really enjoyed it. He's only got one mission this season, prize money. And that's why we've been running him in all, didn't bother with Pertemps or anything like that. He'd been running in all the graded races to try and earn as much money for the Doddy Weir Foundation. Because, as you know, Kenny gives everything. So, and we were always just going to run in these races and hope one might fall in. He's got placed every time. He's winning good prize money. Good old Doddy. He's a star.
Jinko Blue, Nicky, he didn't.
Jinko Blue, Coral. He's been tricky. He's been difficult. He just didn't enjoy jumping fences as well as he ought to have done. And we've had back problems and surgeries and all sorts of things. But he's still a talented horse, actually. He ran a very good race in Cheltenham.
Well, as you say, behind Cadwell de Matin,
Yeah,
that was probably
yeah.
the best run for a while.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And I know obviously he's dropping back into handicap company, but he's a sort of horse that could run well off a
He should do.
high mark, couldn't he?
That's why he was here, yeah.
I feel like one of the oldies that are racing fans that keep calling the Coral Gold Cup the Hennessy. I keep calling the Coral Cup the Coral Cup. It's not the Coral Cup anymore. It's going to be the Coral Cup to me always. But look, Jinko Blue's going to that race. Obviously ran a nice race behind Cadwell de Matin last time out. If you actually go back and watch it, he does stay on really, really nicely. I thought it was interesting the way that Hendo, A, brought him to Kempton to give him a nice piece of work around Kempton, and B, just kept mentioning him. Just mentioning him as still got a talent behind him. You go back and watch his novice handicap chase win, first time out of fences. He looks like a really nice horse. Bolster up off a low mark, fair enough. He's got a much higher mark now and over hurdles. But yeah, I just wanted to mention him. I thought he'd be definitely on the team for the Cup handicap hurdle. And then Doddy the Great, like he's a massive prize to the stairs. And on all-known form, he probably hasn't got too much of a chance. But at the same time, he worked really nice, I thought, at Kempton. Hendo said he loved it. I think he's got just a small of a squeak each way chance. And, look, he's obviously, going around picking up prize money for the Doddy Weir Foundation, which is obviously fantastic. But as for his chances for Cheltenham, I'd give him a little bit. So those are my main takeaways from Hendo. Finally, Paul Nicholls obviously hasn't been maybe having too many Cheltenham Festival winners over the last couple of years. Coldwell Potter last year, Stage Star a couple of years before that. But he has probably got one of his stronger teams he's had in quite a while. Manila Yoga is probably going to be his number 1 horse for the Fred Winter, probably alongside Pourquoi Papa, who we've already mentioned in this video. Seems like Tutti Quanti is going to go to the Champion Hurdle. He worked really, really nicely alongside No Drama this end at Kempton when I was there. And he'll have a couple more for the handicaps. Quebecois for the Ultimate, for example. And even maybe Sombreux might go to the Grand Annual. But I just wonder if that might be a sighter for entry. But I think if it's better ground, Paul was very keen to mention Sombreux as well. But the 2 horses that seem to be number 1 and number 2 in his team, No Drama this end and Regent Stroll. No Drama this end speaks for himself. However, what I thought the interesting angle was when speaking to Nicholls was the fact he's A, been around Lambourne I think this would be a couple of weeks ago now, to work there, and B, also brought him to Kempton. Clearly he's a horse who takes plenty of work at home. Will he be fit enough for Cheltenham? I imagine so, but I just think it's very interesting that he has to take plenty of work to get fit, and this is what Paul said.
He went to Lambourne last week and did a gallop with Regent Stroll, who didn't need to come today, but No Drama takes plenty of work. You can see he's a big, strong, thick-set horse. All's going to come with today, just what we wanted. Went round with Tudi Conti, who's a sharp horse. Perfect. It did cross my mind to go to Ascot 2 weeks ago because there was a National Hunt Novice Hurdle. He'd only got one penalty, but if something had gone wrong, it's not worth it. So we just elected to stick to the plan, go and have a nice gallop last week, and then come here and today. He had 3 quick runs. He actually he did quite well, really, to do the Cheltenham, and then it was an afterthought to go for the Sandown race, but had to really, and then gained quickly around at Newbury. So he got over those quickly. So a nice break, and then get stuck into him again now. So he's nice and fit and fresh. If you look at him as a model, I was trying to compare him with Denman. Big tank of a horse in a lot of ways, takes a lot of work. You could argue, what did Denman achieve in his first 3 runs over hurdles compared to him? And I did actually say, if one day we got a horse that might compare with Denman, it's him. And I can only dream that, but I wasn't comparing him at that particular time. But he's the same sort of model, like doesn't show masses at home, workman-like, and big and strong. And you probably wouldn't know how good he is till he runs. But if he's anything as good as, and nowhere near as good as him, he's close to him, we'd be well happy in the future. And again, a bit like Denman in a lot of ways, this horse, the best you'll see of him is when he's jumping a fence in time. Regent Stroll will run in the Jack Richards, same profile as Caldwell Potter, really. He's improved, very nearly won a Grade 1 last year, got beat by the horse who I think nearly won the Stairs Hurdle. We've trained him for that race. I didn't want to run him again after Cheltenham and risk getting any raise of the weight. And he's getting mentally much better. He worked great last week.
How long has the Jack Richards been potential ban?
All season really. I just thought if we were anywhere near 145, it would be quite a nice mark. I'm sure he's better than that, but mentally he's improving. His last run at Cheltenham was a tidy run. He'd had 3 quick runs. I wanted to get some experience into him, see how he cope with Cheltenham, and there was a lot of people there that day, and he's just becoming mentally a more mature horse.
I personally fancy No Drama this end for the Turners, but obviously it's very interesting to see what Mighty Park does. But he did actually speak about Mighty Park and said, he is this big hype horse from Ireland. He's only won a maiden hurdle. Who knows what he could be like? It's all a bit of chat at the moment. This is my opinion now. It almost seems a little bit like Mighty Park's like Imperi Pass, the way Imperi Pass came to Cheltenham a couple of seasons ago and won the what's now the Turners, what it used to be called, the Ballymore, and that was always basically based on chat. I think it'll be very interesting to see what Mighty Park does and whether he goes against No Drama this end. I personally think No Drama this end has not done anything wrong. I think he's got a good chance. And Paul, he's quietly confident, I think, of a big run from No Drama this end. Of course he's going to be, but I think this is different compared to his previous horse he sent to this race. And with Regent Stroll, very interesting horse, and the fact they've obviously campaigned him like Caldwell Potter. Is he Caldwell Potter? I don't think so. However, is he a well-handicapped horse? I believe so. I think Paul's cottoned on to the idea in the last couple of years. He's been training for years now. He obviously knows the business better than me. But I think he's cottoned on to the last couple of years that you really need to be plotting these horses towards Cheltenham handicaps from a long way out. And he's ran him 3 times very quickly before Christmas to get that handicap mark, to get a nice handicap mark, and he's just putting him away for the Jack Richards. He's maturing as well. I think the big thing about him is he is maturing, and he definitely have a chance at Jack Richards, and he probably run number 1 as well, and is obviously clearly Paul's number 1 handicap chance. That's Paul Nicholls' team for the Cheltenham Festival. Thank you very much for watching this episode of True to Form. To summarise, I think that Jinko Blue is definitely the horse to keep a bit of a small eye on for Nicky Henderson. From Skelton's team, Panic Attack for the Mare's Chase, really likes her. And for Paul Nicholls, No Drama this end as well. And we mentioned Ben Pauling's Vanderpoel's definitely the one for the Grand Annual. Thank you very much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe. We'll be doing, hopefully, a True to Form special for Cheltenham Festival later in the week or early next week. Make sure to stick around for that. Thank you for watching, and good luck at Cheltenham. This has been True to Form.
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.